I made a boo-boo. All right, now we are live officially. What's up, folks? I'm your host, Konrad, on Wednesday Night Reviews. Sorry for some minor technical difficulties. And tonight we are joined by quite the cast. So, from my screen, immediately to my right is Emily Stewart. Then I have Keith Grachow, and finally Stephen Andrews. So, for the folks out there who've maybe never heard any of your names or seen any of your faces, we'll start with Keith and let the folks know who you are.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. I am a comic book creator, writer, illustrator. I have been doing comics for a couple of decades now, and with Toronto Comix Anthology, this is going to be my third time working with this fine cast of people here. So I'm very happy to be part of this whole anthology as well as this podcast.
Awesome. And Emily, go for it.
I'm Emily Stewart. I'm a freelance editor and writer based in Ottawa. I come to comics through the literary world, and yeah, excited to be a part of this and to be working with some really awesome people for this project.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And finally, Stephen.
Hey there. I'm the publisher. I do all the boring things. If it's boring, it's my job. I started the TO Comix Press back in 2014. We've had a lot of fun with it. We've been lucky enough to work with Keith 3 times now. I'm very excited to work with Emily. She's doing a fantastic job with the project, and I'm excited to be here.
Fantastic. Well, I'm excited for all of you to be here. I guess just to start with, obviously we are here to talk about a new TO Comix Press book, a new anthology. I guess, you know what, Emily, why don't you let us know the new title and a little bit about the book?
All right. So the book is called The City We Chose, and it is an anthology of 14 comics, all about life in the city, living in the city, how we came to be there, what keeps us there, and how the city could be better. It's a really fun collection, and we've got immigration stories, we've got stories about rent and dealing with terrible landlords. We've got like fantasy stories, we've got some nonfiction in there. It's a really interesting and fun group of stories.
Awesome. Thank you.
I think our elevator pitch for it, was why do we live in the cities that hate us?
Oh, God.
Because if you're younger, if you're like under 30, like the city is not always kind to you. But where else are we going to go? But we have this we have a love affair with the city, but it's also like mean sometimes.
Yeah, that it is. And Emily, specifically for yourself, what is your involvement with the project?
All right. Well, Stephen emailed me around this time last year, I believe.
Yep.
Oh, cool.
To be like, hey, would you be interested in this idea that we have? And I was pretty much on board right away.
Yeah.
Because so I had it as my job. I work on novels and stuff a lot, and I was like, I really just want to work with some artists. I want to work with some different creators, and I've actually got another project that's kind of semi-related, and so we kind of had this conversation about cities and like urban spaces and things we like and things that we like less. And we're like, yeah, so I said yes right away, and then we had to wait to see if some grant funding came in, and it did. So then we got started finding some other editors to work with, and then put out our call for submissions. And so
I love it.
Yeah, it's all rolled from there. But my role as the editor is kind of to manage the project. I am specifically editing a handful of the stories, but I have two editors, Alison Bannister and Vita Belsa, who are also working on individual stories. And so the three of us are each working on stories, but I'm kind of managing the two of them, just making sure everybody stays on schedule, make sure we know who's doing what and what files we need and where things are going.
Right on. So essentially, you're chasing about 18 of the creature behind Steven.
Sometimes, I'm incredibly lucky to have this group of I think it's 23 or 24 around there creators who are all doing wonderful work. Everybody's really good at communicating where they are in their process, and we have a lovely Discord group where people have been sharing some of their in progress stuff. We get a lot of this group cute artwork. And so it's really there is a lot of things to keep track of in an anthology.
I bet.
But it's super fun to see everything progress from the initial scripts that we got, or even the pitches that we got, because we didn't ask people to send in completed scripts for this mission period. We were just like, what do you want to write about? What do you want to write, or what do you want to create? So we got to see from the very kernel of an idea to a script, and now currently we're in colors. So we've got people coloring their comics.
Oh my God, that is so cool and so much work. So one, congrats for getting this far to be able to wrangle that many artists together, getting them all on the same page, and making that happen. Now, Steven, I think this question is more a you question. Just from the research I did on the previous anthologies and how transparent TO Comix has been about the whole process, which thank you, because you make my life easier for this, but also you make it so easy for people, I think, that want to do this, learn and see it all. In particular, one thing I was interested in asking about was sort of the physical and I guess the reach out portion of getting this created. So on your website, TOComixPress.com, TOComix.com, there is a wonderful set of articles where you lay out, I believe it was for the third book that you made, where you lay out the cost for everything. You lay out what came in, you lay out your expenses, what went out, the profits, what it had to pay for, who it paid, all that stuff, which again, thank you, because it's really cool to be able to see that information. But you also, for me, most interest, you listed in it the criteria to apply to that particular anthology. One, they had to be in and about Toronto, they had to live near it at least. It had to have minimal to no superheroes because you didn't want it to become a superhero book. Fair. And then you had a bunch of other sort of criteria, and I'm wondering, for this anthology, again, the city we choose, what were the criteria?
We had a lot of intense discussions about that. Myself, Emily, Kavita, and Allison, just trying to determine what do we want to see, what aspects of the city were interesting to us, and we wanted a story to talk about immigration. We wanted to get some Indigenous perspectives, because certainly, if you're an Indigenous Canadian, you have a very different experience of the city than someone like myself, who's an immigrant who arrived here. And so we wanted to get different perspectives to make sure it wasn't just a monoculture. One of the things I always love in comics is getting a little insight into other people's perspectives, into seeing a very personal comic. When I first got into comics as a horrifying looking teenager, I loved journal comics. That was my thing. And so there's a lot of journal comic rings. And so it was just fascinating to see this insight. Some of my first exposure to gay culture was reading a gay dude's journal diary talking about deciding that if this was actually him, this interrogation of himself through illustration. And so I've always been fascinated by what's everything in the comic. What perspective is in there? And so that was something that was important to Emily and Allison. Particularly, Emily also wanted to get some disabled perspectives in there. Because certainly Toronto has an enormous disabled community, but there's huge chunks of Toronto that are just not accessible to disabled folks. I mean, if you look at the number of elevators in the streetcar in the subway system in Toronto, there's only a handful of stops that are actually wheelchair accessible. And so even in this like relative utopia, it's very harsh and unwelcoming. So we wanted to make sure that we had lots of perspectives in the city. We also wanted to make sure it was a narrative book. We wanted to make sure it had stories in it as opposed to essays. I mean, much like I love essays, much like I love a good comics, to me at least, are about narrative. They're about storytelling. And so I wanted to see this very personal perspective on these comics.
Right on. Okay, interesting. And that brings us to Keith. So the next question, obviously, we've heard from one of the editors, the key editors. We've heard from Stephen, who's sort of founded the series. Keith, as someone who's applied or pitched, successfully gotten in, and is now working on one of the stories in the book, what is your sort of, and again, without too much spoilers, because people need to get the book to read everything, but what has your work on the book been like? Obviously, this is the third time now you've done this. What's that experience like? And can you talk about, one, getting in, what it's like to work with that many different creators? I appreciate you don't work with all of them, but you're in a pool with them. And yeah, what the anthology, I think, means to you.
I may not answer those questions in the order that you just asked them. I just want to mention, though, so this current story I'm working on, written by Chris Lackey, and it's The Pride and Shame of Bracetown. And it's a hockey story, and I've been drawing a bunch of hockey stories previous to this, so I felt like this was a really nice fit for me in regards to I'm already kind of immersed in the movement of the characters and what they wear and stuff like that. In regards to this, how this affects me and why I apply, I like to do short stories and try different visual experiments. I like working with new writers to see how they tell stories, so it helps me learn about storytelling, and that's always really appealing about an anthology. I always recommend to anybody who wants to get into comic books, an anthology is a great way to start because it's a short story. It's a challenge in doing a short story because it's a little deceptive. People think, 5-10 pages is easy, but it can be quite difficult to tell a good story in that allotted amount of pages. So for me, I like that challenge. I like working with new people. Toronto Comics, it's just the whole engine of it. It runs really well, and I really like what it does for the comic book community in general. It brings in a lot of new people that have never worked in comics. It allows people who've never worked together to work together. It highlights who we are as a community in this area, and that to me is why it's really important. Should I bring my fur baby in here too?
I mean, if that's within close reach, yeah.
He's showing theirs. I'll show my 17-year-old pug who's.
She's only here because it's near her food time.
That's so good.
So I mean, in that regards, I always like to. I do long form story telling as well, but I always like to at least try it once a year, once every couple of years, to do some kind of anthology. And I'd been waiting for Stephen to come back with Toronto Comics for a little while. So I was really happy to see that the anthology came back this last year. And when I applied, I was very, very grateful to get back into it. And so far, I've had this as a great experience with Chris and Kavita, who's my editor. It's been really nice to get to know new voices in the Ontario comic book scene. And the story itself, it's about perseverance, redemption of the hero, and I think that says something. It's about a lot of us, getting up after failure, right? So the story itself really appealed to me.
I love it. Thank you, Keith.
Yeah.
Now, Keith sort of touched on something that for me is actually quite personal about this series. So I've so far gotten, I believe I own 6 out of the 10 or 7 out of the 10 books, because as someone who, like, in 2011 when I started reading comics, I actually started with Batman #1 from New 52. That's right there. That was my first floppy I ever picked up, and then I immediately went, okay, cool. There's Detective Comics, there's Catwoman, there's Robin. I did the whole Batman thing. That was my jam. So starting with that, and then after a number of years getting into indie comics and wanting to talk to indie comics creators, when I found this book, it was like, oh my God, this is specifically my niche of local indie exclusively. I love it. So I've always been a big fan of the series. Every iteration that comes out, I try and snap up, like the original issue, just the TO Comix, Yonge At Heart, Shout Out. God, the other 3 I have the, what is it? Osgood is Gold, and the sister one to that.
Wayward Sisters and Wayward Kindred. Yeah.
Yeah. So I love the series, and it is everything on the end of creation that my show tries to promote. So thank you. What I yeah,
Thanks for supporting us. I appreciate it.
absolutely. Like I said, it makes me happy. So I think this next question will be for mostly Emily, a little bit Steven. So Emily, when it comes to assembling this anthology, you mentioned earlier 23, 24 creators, one of which is Keith. What I'm curious about, to just sort of get people excited about the book, and again, no spoilers, please, but can you let us know some of the creators that are on it? How many of them roughly, I don't expect exact numbers, but how many of roughly are coming back from having been on a previous issue? And as much as you're willing to, tell us about maybe some of the stories.
Okay. Well,
Hello,
I will
Megan.
start by saying that we have kind of expanded beyond the scope of Toronto for this particular anthology. I myself am from Ottawa, so we definitely have some Toronto stories, but we also have folks from Vancouver. We have Brandon Mitchell has a story about moving from Ottawa to Fredericton.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and on the Toronto side, we do have Anthony Oliveira has written a lovely poignant story about like grief and how the city kind of marches on through the lens of like urban myths about U of T.
Cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. That one's Ali Rom, Kaldoff, and Kristen Lee have done the art for that one, and it's gorgeous.
Awesome.
And then one of our shorter ones.
I was gonna say, which ones that you've seen? I appreciate you're not the sole editor. Which ones that you've seen, I guess for you personally, most excite you? I don't try and take out the unbiased editor of these are actually really good stories, but for you, Emily, of like, oh my God, this is so cool. Which one do you think is your, I don't want to use the word favorite, but favorite?
Yeah, I don't know if I could choose a favorite, because we had a lot of really great submissions, and like if we had infinite money, we would have taken more, but alas. But some ones, one of the first ones in that was like, oh, people understood the assignment.
Oh boy.
When we were going through submissions, is called City Haver Plus, and it is written by Day Irwin. Megan Kearney's done the art, and it's now being colored by Kristen Lee, and it's kind of a fun take on like Sim City.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's
So
a
it's
little
kind of got like this.
organized rebellion of the SimCity inhabitants against an uncaring or inattentive overlord.
Yeah,
It's so cute. I can't. Megan Kearney's phenomenal. Megan Carter of the chat will back me up on that. And it's just Day Irwin is also a great writer. We worked with them on Shout Out and Wayward Kindred. Fantastic person. Very excited to work with them again. So, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I'm very excited about that story.
no, all the enthusiasm is there. Like it was like as soon as we read it, we were like, oh, that one's got to go in. But of course, we had Bracetown. Like we were looking for a mix of genres too. Like we didn't want everyone to be like a contemporary city tale, or like we didn't want everyone to like do the same thing. So we're like, well, this one's about hockey, which is like Canadian. So we're like a little biased there. We're like, what's this hockey story about? And it is a hockey story. It's about playing hockey, but it's also about like what does it mean to return home when so often like you leave your city of origin to go seek fame, fortune, careers, and what does it mean when you have to go back? So we had just like a lot of really cool stuff.
That's awesome. Now, Keith, the story that she's just talking about, is that your story?
Yeah.
Are you good if I throw up some of the art?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I have it. I've got the first 3 on my end, so that should be fairly spoiler free. All right, and there we go. Now I guess so. Keith, like you said earlier, you like to every once in a while, because you normally do sort of longer format stuff, which a lot of it I actually have beside me or on the wall. You wanted to go ahead and do a shorter form story. From your perspective as an artist, when it comes to working short form compared to long form, what are some of the challenges with doing an anthology piece?
I mean, it's still got to have the beginning, middle, and end, and you have to figure out how to have some kind of arc going through it in a way that connects the reader, right? They have to be invested in it. And so you don't have a lot of luxury to get the audience, the way you pace it, introducing them to the characters and the setting and stuff, you kind of have to hit them very quickly and hope that the writing and the art kind of just grab them. Whereas with a longer form story, you have a little bit more time to, thank you, Megan. You have a little bit more time to develop the characters and the story to make them guess, draw them in. So I think that Chris Lackey, the writer, he did a great job giving that kind of character development, just wanting the audience, I think, to keep on turning the pages to see, what this hockey player who's coming back to the town he had played hockey at, what's going on. And in developing the characters, I wanted to make sure these characters weren't just your stereotypical. I wanted them to be original. That's why I don't think Kavita will mind me saying this, but I made Kavita the announcer. I just wanted to make it.
Cool.
Yeah, I wanted the feeling of the story to be like everybody. It could be anybody. So you have all different types of people in this story. So those are the benefits too in regards to doing a short form story. Is that I can really bring in people that we know, right? And that's always fun for me to like put a little Easter eggs in there for the reader to see if they can figure it out as they read.
I love it. I often ask people, I would say every other interview I do, oh, do you ever draw your friends into the book or put stuff, local stuff that only you and your friends would know? So thank you for doing that, because I love that kind of stuff. Even if like me reading it, I might not realize, but when Kavita sees it, they'll be like, oh, well, there I am.
Yeah.
That's just so cool. I guess my next question, to get a little sappy, very much this is entirely focused on community, local Canadian stories, and the anthology itself, because of it's focusing on creators from that level as well, and helps build community. I guess, can you, each of you, talk about sort of what community means for you and how this project can help that, or does help that, I should say. And whoever wants to go for it.
I guess I'll jump in with some thoughts. So as I said, I'm a full-time editor. A lot of the time, that means that I'm sitting home alone by myself in front of the computer. And a lot of the time with longer form editing, where I'm like editing novels or something, I'm working on the same thing for like 2-3 weeks. I send it back to the author and they go off and do their thing. I may or may not hear from them again.
Oh.
So this like comics community, because there's so much collaboration, like there really does feel like there's like a good community aspect to it. Mm-hmm. Plus, like, everybody's kind of here because they want to be. Not that they aren't in any other literary field, but I don't know. I feel like in the indie comic space, like there's a lot of passion that people are bringing into their work, and a lot of understanding as well. Like whenever there's been any like scheduling conflicts, or somebody's like, over the course of this, I got COVID like the week after we put out our call for submissions. Our other editors also had various bouts of illnesses.
Oh no.
And you got renovated.
Yeah, I got renovated, which
oh god,
so very fitting for this particular anthology.
I mean, yeah.
So I moved,
I'm so
but
sorry.
like everybody's been like really awesome. They've been like, like if we can't get this done today, like what can we do instead? And everybody's here to like help each other out. And in our little Discord, we have somebody's being like, what do you guys think of this? Or like, can I get a second opinion on this? Or somebody just puts up artwork and somebody's like, oh my god, that's the cutest thing ever.
I love it. It's interesting you say that, Emily, because earlier this weekend I was at Wayside Comics in North York, and Fellhound and Jason Lowe were there, and I was speaking with Fell, and they had mentioned they'd been working on some projects, which was really good, but because of that, it was a lot of like, they were home alone doing a lot of this, which is like, great, work is awesome, and they're getting to be creative and do their thing, but at the same time they were like, very much so though, I realize how isolating it can be. So thank you, Emily, because I think that sort of speaks to the importance of also like a group project like this, where you could be exposed to other people and have that interaction.
Yeah, and it's like, I grew up, like everybody else, going to school where you do group projects, and there's like, it's no fun because nobody wants to do it.
Yeah.
This is like the complete opposite. Like everybody wants to be there, and everybody wants to like be creating something awesome together. So
awesome. I love it. Like that makes me happy. The passion makes me happy. And time again, like I continue to hear from people that absolutely like indie comics, the community has its own back and it supports everybody. But yeah, I love to hear it. Stephen, what about you? How does community involve this for you, given you've started this whole series?
Well, if anything, I would say that community is often fleeting. Uh, I got into comics about 10 years ago, a little bit before I started this project, and a lot of the comic book stores that I went to, and the Comic Book Embassy, which used to be this lovely little Chinatown place where a lot of comic creators hung out and like worked on stuff together, like that unfortunately has faded. There are a lot of the institutions that helped onboard me to comics, that helped teach me everything I know, have moved on, have left the industry, or have moved somewhere else. And you really have to kind of seize on as hard as you can to the folks that you love, and try to maintain community. And part of why I created this book, or this series, is because I wanted to like have a community, and I needed this thing, and it didn't exist. And if making a book was the only way to get that community, by God, I'd have to learn how to make books.
That's great.
Yeah, exactly. That's that drive and passion I'm talking about.
Yeah, like I found it really rewarding, and especially as Emily said, the isolation and fell. Keith, I'm sure can talk about it very much. That like comics is isolating. You've got to spend like 8-10 hours a day at your board doing your writing. Even if you're a prose author, you're often sitting there in silence. And unless you are a part of a community, unless you can see people in the evenings, it's just hard to keep your passion up. It's hard to keep iterating on things. You want to show your work to somebody. You want to get feedback on it. And it's hard to do that in a vacuum. And so I think it's really important to, and not just with this project, not with us as a community, but like seek out communities, seek out folks that you can share with. And like the pandemic did not help.
No. Oh my God, no.
Yeah. So I think a lot of us are still recovering in many ways from that, like even further enforced isolation. For ourselves, we shut down for a few years. I think Keith alluded to this, that we only recently brought back our anthologies because like the pandemic effectively just like shut the doors. We could not, there's nowhere to sell products. There, like TCAF was gone. The convention scene was hit very badly. And it's only now, like 3 years later, that we're getting back into the scene, and I'm rediscovering how much I love making comics, and reconnecting with my friends who I haven't seen in a while, and I'm just excited to get back into it again.
I love it. I'm so excited for you then. Like, one, I am sorry that the pandemic did that, which I would love to talk about. Ideally, maybe next, about like the difficulties of sales, so that people who maybe want to get into comics can understand the approach to that, and why you can't just sell your comic online and only worry about it there. But Keith, I do want to touch on the idea of community with you, specifically because of the amount of times I've already had you on the show, our weekly show that we do, as well as your career in comics and the things you do outside of just making comics. I think you have a very long history within the industry. So I'm interested to hear what you have to say on the deal.
Well, Stephen can attest to what I'm about to talk about, which is I love getting the anthology in people's hands at shows. And that is how I'm trying to build the comic book community. It's a great book to introduce people that may have never read a comic before, to learn about what we're about, what the indie scene in Toronto is about, or even outside of people that I've sold this book to, people all over North America. And to me, that's how I get to build the comic book community. That's how I get to connect people, because maybe somebody who picks up the book, they want to be a comic book creator, and now they can see all these amazing stories, and there is contact information, there's websites, and they can learn who these creators are, and maybe connect with them. And so that is a way we can connect and make this comic book community stronger. That's one of the things I really love about TO Comix. What they're doing is bringing us together in that way. people that have never been part of the community, and we can introduce them to it very easily with a great quality book.
And I know mentorship is very close to your heart as well. And I think you've mentioned enjoying being able to share your experience with other creators.
Sorry, say that again.
Oh, sorry. I know that mentorship is something that's very close to your heart as well, and that you've really enjoyed working with new creators to try and kind of help show them the ropes as someone who has like decades of experience in the industry.
Well, yeah, I mean, that is another aspect to my journey at this point in life, is that I want to pass on what I've learned to the people that have either just started the comic book journey or want to get into comic books, or have got out of it and come back into it. And I find that the Toronto Comix is a great way to introduce people to that, or even within the Toronto Comix, all the creators that this may be their first time creating a comic book story. And so Steve and I have talked about this. Where do they go from here? Where can we help them on their journey so that they know how to navigate the world of comic books? Because the industry itself can be very cold and hard. It could be very uncaring. It doesn't. A lot of these businesses, that the publishers, they want content, but they're not necessarily taking care of the creator who they are bringing in. And so I would love to be able to help people that are navigating that world to know, listen, publishers can offer you something, but you also have power within yourself to self-publish, to do a Kickstarter, to raise funds for it, to do other things that are related to the creative world, teach or do commissions, whatever it may be, to be able to continue doing the comic books that you love doing. And the other aspect, I mean, you're talking about sales, is selling your books, and how it's not as difficult as you may think. Although I understand some people, for sure, it can be very intimidating to sell. But there, one of the things I do with the Toronto Comix is I put the book in their hand. Some person who walks by me, I put that book in their hand, and now they have ownership over the book. This amazing book that they can flip through and see all different stories of, different genres from different creators, different voices, and that, I think, makes it's inspiring. And then they go, so what is this about? And so this is one of those things that I love using Toronto Comix as a way to show people that you can sell your book as well, if you just figure out what your story's about, and get that ownership by putting it in a person's hand. So anyway, those are some of the things that Steve's talking about in regards to like a mentorship that we've been talking about.
Yeah, perfect.
On that note of mentorship, I remember when Stephen, you first approached me, I was like, I'm from Ottawa. Does this make sense for TO Comix? And you said, well, it's TO Comix, but it's also towards two comics. And I think that's kind of a fun part of it too, is we do have some newbies this time around. And it's great to see them working with people who maybe have a little bit more experience, or figuring things out together. We've had a few scripts that it started one way, but then once the team got together and got talking about it there a bit more, they're well, maybe we don't put that in words, maybe we just show that with this part of the artwork, and just seeing how creators can change their mind and develop just through working on a singular story is awesome.
That's definitely something interesting, because one thing that, as someone who's never made my own comic but loves the medium, the stories that I get to enjoy, but also evidently the behind the scenes stuff, the way that comics get made, the way that panel layouts get done, the guiding the eye, just like you were mentioning, what you show and not tell. I find all that stuff extremely interesting, and when I have asked about it, almost exclusively, because like most of the people I talk to, I have a Kickstarter for my first issue or my first volume, whatever. So they always talk to how their approach to it is. So Emily, thank you for sharing the fact that you guys do pool together. You sort of pass comments and ideas around to be like, hey, this can be polished a little more this way to convey the same idea, but maybe a little differently or more effectively. Because yeah, I think there's something new comic creators can learn a lot about, or even folks like myself, just from getting feedback and working with other people that they might not otherwise have met, which is awesome. So
I think one of the uniquenesses of the comics medium, like you're saying, is how collaborative it is, and how much more a final comic is than the sum of each of its parts. As a sometimes writer myself, I love seeing artwork come back and seeing my work transformed and seeing it become so much cooler now that someone else has given their insight into it. And I think that there's often a really positive feedback loop when creators are on the same wavelength or find that wavelength together. And it's wonderful to see. Like one of the things I'm most proud of as a publisher is seeing a creative team that we paired up on a project going forward to continue to make books together. To see the little partnership formed and was stable, and like now they're just making cool stuff without us. It's phenomenal.
Oh, that's so cool. That must be a very uniquely rewarding thing. Because I love that kind of stuff. Like hearing like there's growth beyond what you've done. Yes, the stuff that you've done in TO Comix has been incredible and helped a lot of people. But yeah, like the idea of it making something else just because of it existing. That's so cool. And thank you very much, Paul. So an important question. We are like really far into the interview for where I would normally ask this one, but it is important to ask, so let's definitely make sure we get it. How is it that I appreciate this may be a little early, and I imagine I know the answer, but I want to hear it from the folks making the book. How and when will people be able to get their hands on the book, support the book? I imagine back the book? What's the process?
Yeah, we'll be launching a Kickstarter on Wednesday, April 17th. Which is coming up real fast.
Oh.
So we'll very shortly we'll post a link on our social media where folks can follow the campaign before it launches. And then, we encourage people to back the book. Please, God, please back our book. We're so proud of it. It's going to be phenomenal. We have it's so close to being done. The artwork will be almost entirely complete by the time the Kickstarter even launches. I'm so proud of it. It's going to be phenomenal. Just follow us on social media, and you'll be able to find all the content there.
Beautiful. I love it. Now, I'll save that one for later. Quick question, not from myself, but from Megan. One Megan Carter asks, because TO Comix focuses so much on nurturing new talent, is the way you work with creative teams different than traditional publishers?
I would say yes. In the early creator space, if you're like the other indie anthologies out there, like Iron Circus Productions, Onishi, Wave Blue something, a lot of them require completed artwork and completed teams before you can approach them. They need to have like a submission. Like Iron Circus, admittedly, they do take pitches and then they develop it. But we're relatively unique in that we'll pair up talent. So if you're a writer and you don't have an artist available, or you just don't have that connection, we'll try and find someone who's on the same wavelength. If you're a first-time artist and you don't have a writer friend that you were excited to work with, we'll try and connect you with someone. And if you're from a remote community or a marginalized community, it is often this insurmountable roadblock that you just can't get into comics because you don't have the connections and you don't have the money to hire someone. And so one of our focuses has always been trying to give people who would not otherwise have a chance their first foot in the door, and then they'll be able to fly off and do other amazing stuff.
Interesting. And go ahead.
Additionally, a lot of, again, I use like early career places, which are often like more indie spaces, there's not a lot of feedback from the editorial staff often. Because editors are overwhelmed. They don't have time. Especially if you got an anthology project with like 30 stories in there, one person cannot handle that. They're not going to be able to provide very detailed feedback unless their development time is very long. But we tend to hire a number of editors and assistant editors to make sure that we are constantly providing feedback to those creators. Like Emily was saying, she's done a fantastic job of like, you get the script, get the artwork, show it to the other members of that community, show it to the other members of that team, and let them build together. But that's not something that's very common. Quite often, you hear from the editor if you missed a deadline or when your paycheck arrives. But other than that, you don't necessarily get a lot of feedback. And I think that close feedback, that ongoing process of supporting and challenging creators is something that it's our uniqueness that we're very passionate about.
I like that, and thank you for helping develop and foster those skills in people. I was gonna say your camera has gone a little. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I found this camera in a literal garbage pile. So if it works at all, it's great.
Nice resourcefulness. I like it.
There's like a bins place around here where there's like Amazon returns end up, and there's just this like garbage troughs of stuff, and you can pay like a handful of bucks to get random electronics. And it's like
cool
webcam that mostly works.
So far, so good. Then I guess Keith. Wow, Konrad, words failed. Wow. So the flip side of that question, what's it like working with TO Comix as opposed to a traditional publisher, or I suppose even self-publishing, because I know you've done that as well.
Well, I was going to mention the whole Discord is unique because it's a community of all of us working together, being able to show our work, being able to like pump each other up. I think that I don't know if there's that kind of team like atmosphere in other publishers. It's more of an isolated. You don't know the other teams that are working on stories. Where this you kind of get a nice community vibe going on, and I think that lends to helping each other out. To be able to make sure that you're doing the story that is going to be the best for the story, right?
Interesting. I love that. Like it's, I believe both Emily and Stephen, you've mentioned it previously, where comics and perhaps it's just specifically indie comics, which if it is, that's a failing of I guess comics at large, because the collaboration bit of comics is so massive and important that I guess I appreciate with all of the other stuff that you're handling. Emily as an editor, Stephen as a person who's sort of coordinating and masterminding here, that you take the time to give the feedback. And from the sounds of it, sometimes that is very much so live, on the fly. Hey, we noticed this. Here's why we're thinking something different, and giving that backup. Because like I said, like earlier, that fostering of talent is, to me, it's so important, and I appreciate it very much. That being said, folks, we've got like 11 and a half minutes left. I'm just going to quickly go over my list of questions because I want to make sure I didn't miss anything that I thought was like cool or crucial. And then I want to ask some fun stuff because while it is definitely important for people to know that on April 17th, TO Comix' next book is coming out, and that they can back it on Kickstarter, correct?
Yes.
Wonderful. I also like to let people know a little bit about the people. In this case, you fine folks. So we covered that, thankfully. Oh, quick, easy question, and I believe, Emily, this will be a you question. This is an anthology. I literally earlier Googled it, and I got the Reddit thing for comic collabs where you guys were asking for submissions, which I think was 9 months ago.
We work fast.
Very fast. My question, though, is how many submissions total did you get? And by God, how do you begin whittling that down? And you don't have to be exact, though. If you can pull up that number, that would be so cool.
I have the Excel document. We got 59, around like 60 or so story submissions from artists. And then we put out a second like call to like fill some gaps that we knew we specifically wanted.
Oh, cool.
And then we had about 45 artists.
Wow. So in total, just about 100 people submitted to work on this.
Yeah.
Wow. Whew. Then
yeah, so we could have made like 4 books if we could have taken everyone.
Just a giant omnibus of TO Comix. That's incredible. Kudos to you for being able to whittle that down and have it make sense and fit. And I
think we had 3 or 4 editorial meetings where we're like, what do you think of this one? What do you think of this one? If we do this one, do we have room for this one? Because we had to think about like the math of it all.
One thing I wanted to ask about, because again, that is weeding down 100-ish people to 30 teams of 2 to 4 people, depending on artist, writer, color, letterer, or something in between. From what I've read previously, again, thank you, is you folks, all of the editors, the 3 editors, because you guys would do a triple editor system, will read each story and then kind of make like a hell yes, they're in, hard no, doesn't fit, and then like a maybe, and then you'll cross-reference that, and all the hard no's are gone, the maybes kind of, and then the heck yeses are in. That means y'all had to read a lot of stuff. How long does that process take?
So we asked for pitches first instead of full script. So that does like cut the reading down a little bit because we only gave people like a smaller amount of space to be like, what's your story? But yeah, we all, the 3 of us read through all of those, and everybody was like, I was like, what are your like top 3? Like right away, right out of the gate, what will you be upset if it doesn't get in? And then, we went from there and kind of looked at, what seems like it's really strong, but maybe needs like a little bit of tweaking to fit, our goals for this anthology, or what's like, we wanted to make sure that we were, having had a diverse group of creators too. So we're like, okay, like, if this story is about this, like, we don't want the story to be exactly the same. We want to make sure that we had, some disability representation, some queer representation, some like, we did have a quota of Ontario creators we needed to meet for grant purposes. But I also wanted to look at cities outside of Toronto because, every city has its own kind of culture and like feel, and I think that's part of the conversation we wanted to have within the pages of the books. And the only thing we were like no city bashing, like we are not saying that any cities are bad. That was like our only, we're like, we don't want any of that. We don't want to be like stoking any rivalries.
Absolutely. I love it. Thank you. That's just a process that because I'm someone who reads slow, I full well could imagine wanting everything possible to give yourself the advantage, but my God, that would still be a lot to go through. Now we've got 5 minutes left in the hour. We're basically at 8 o'clock. Are you all good for about 10 more minutes?
Yeah. I'm good, yeah.
I'm good.
Okay. Because Megan's come in with another interesting one. So once again, Megan Carter, since there was a lockdown in between volumes, what was the energy / reception like when you announced the return / started soliciting for pitches? Did the gap in time affect you, and were people waiting? I think the last one is a yes. I know I was. Keith, yeah. Yeah.
I think it's a complicated question. I think when people heard about it, they were very excited. A lot of folks who had been in previous volumes, who had read the volumes when they were in university or college, are now graduating and be like, oh, well, I can be a part of this. But at the same time, getting that news out was a lot harder than it used to be because the social media landscape is very fractured now. And so reaching out to folks, people are excited to hear about it. But like, I feel like the overarching theme is isolation here. But like Twitter, or X or whichever, has cratered in terms of reach. I had to reach out to a lot of folks in person because they just didn't see my Facebook posts. They didn't see our Twitter posts. And like Reddit, we still publish our stuff. We got a lot of contacts through there. But there were a lot of folks who like saw or heard about this late in production and were like, oh, when did you ask for submissions? I didn't hear about this. And I'd love to have them too, but we're in a very fractured time, and until like a new social media megalith arises, it's going to be harder to reach out to folks. We've had good Blue Sky. Hopefully that wins. Tumblr's making a comeback.
Oh, cool.
But I will say also, personally, the gap in time definitely affected me. Just being out of the space for 3 years. Now I'm coming back and discovering like, oh no, the contacts are fractured. A lot of the folks we worked with have become too successful for us, which is phenomenal. That's the best possible thing.
Yeah, I mean, really.
And we're lucky enough to get some talent like Keith to come back and like show the youngins how it's done. But it's just in a lot of ways it's like a new editorial crew. And Emily and Alison and Kavita have done a fantastic job. But it's kind of been reinventing the wheel a little bit and finding out a process that works for everyone. And like some of the things that, because I worked with Alison for many years, Alison O'Toole, it was phenomenal. And like I had not realized how much I'd come to rely on Alison for managing projects. And so now I've had to like be much more careful in like planning out like, oh no, what are the things I need for this Kickstarter? What are the production steps? So it's helped me a little bit to realize like how gifted many of the folks that I work with are. And I do want to stress that Emily's doing an incredible job, and I'm so excited to work with her.
Awesome.
And if you're in comics and you can edit her, please talk to Emily.
I love it. What a great shout out.
Well, on to add to that, for the pandemic affecting me as an editor, Ottawa has a comic scene, but it's at least from what I've seen, maybe there's a secret section that I don't know about, but TCAF is the big one. Like TCAF is the thing, and I went to TCAF in like 2018 or so, and then I was meeting people. That's where I met Stephen for the first time, and then the pandemic happened, and I stayed at home, and I didn't meet any comics people. And so I was kind of just sitting, working on novels and stuff, which is super fun. Working on a few picture books, also fun. But I wasn't like making a whole lot of progress on the comic scene other than a few things here and there. A few people like, can you check for typos in my script and stuff like that. So like kind of like being in editorial for a while, but like not getting to like do the networking side, which is a big part of comics specifically. Has definitely had an impact.
Interesting.
Yeah, and for me, I think I just worked throughout the pandemic. I was in a very privileged position to have work for a good year or so, but one of the things that going into the pandemic, I coincidentally right before it, I was like, I don't want to do shows anymore. I'm just burned out. I was doing so many of them, and I was feeling disconnected from the community because of that. And I think that the absence, makes the heart grow fonder, right? So once we were able to do shows again, 2021, I felt so reinvigorated, and my passion for not just meeting the people that I've known, but meeting new people, and the path I'm on now, which is trying to get this new community of creators helping lift them up. I don't think I wouldn't have thought about that if not for what we went through during the pandemic. I think it made me organized priorities for me. It made me realize what was important and what I wanted to spend the limited amount of time I have in this world to do, which is to bring people together in a way that the joy that comic books has brought me, both as a reader and as a creator. I want to be able to share that with people, and it's just become so much more important. And that's why I think, I mean, it sounds like I'm kind of like really the Toronto Comics has just been such a great way to do that. I guess I just keep on saying that, but I really mean that. I just think it's such a great community that's right in front of you in a book that really can help bring us all together and make us forget what we went through during the pandemic, or maybe as a comic book creator who writes a story, it can make us it channel what we felt during the pandemic into a story. So it just gives us a lot of opportunity. The Toronto Comic Anthology series.
I love it. Steven, did you have something to add there?
No, that's very sweet.
I know I keep on saying it, but I do feel that. And that's the other thing too. I just want to make sure I don't want to hold back anymore. I don't want to, I have to, if I feel something, I want to tell people how I feel about it. And Toronto Comics, I'm very passionate about it.
And you know what? I couldn't agree more, Keith. Like I said earlier, it's one of those things where, for me personally, when I found it, it was like, oh, this is like the thing. You need to get more of this. And then, I started hunting what was available while I found it. And I've just, been following along. So, firstly...
sorry, wait, tell a personal story. I'll wait for one. Sorry.
I was just going to say thank you all so very much for coming on the show tonight, for sharing with me about it. And I am so glad that I am able to help promote the book. And again, to the folks out there watching now or watching in the future, April 17th, it goes live. You can back it then. And I imagine there will be a link that comes out to be able to to be able to follow it and get all the notifications. So as soon as that is out, I will include it in the doobly-doo down below.
Awesome. I'm going to share the secret origin of TO Comix, actually.
Yes.
I've got 3 minutes.
Yes.
I'll try to keep it short. Cool. So we were in Ty Templeton's comic book boot camp way back in the day. We decided we were going to make an anthology about pirates.
Okay.
It was going to be a super cool pirate. You were like there's like a garbage patch that floats in the island. It floats in the ocean.
Yep.
We wanted to have it's like the pirate patch where like all the boats wreck up against each other. It's like Pirate Island, and it's just like towering hellscape of like rotting pirate kingdoms. And then we pitched this idea to Ty, like, hey, what if we did a pirates anthology? And Ty was like, no, that's stupid. And he's like, make it about Toronto instead. And he was totally right. His feeling was that often when you pick up a comic, you want to see yourself reflected in it, like you were saying. And you pick up a Toronto Comics book, and it's a story about you. It's a story with a place you recognize. It's a story with people like you. And even if it's silly, even if there's robots or monsters, it's engaging. There's something that immediately grabs you for it.
Ty was right, man. You're correct. Yeah, it's such a special book, I think, that you've all put together. And Steven, absolutely thank you for wanting to make it and continuing to make it, because I appreciate this is not an easy thing to do, even once, and you've done it. This will be the 11th.
God help us.
Yeah. Now, that being said, we're sort of at the end of the interview. The hard questions are over, at least I hope. So classically, I always end on the same 2 to 3 questions. And I feel like, Keith, you've been through this, so if it's a repeat answer, that's totally cool. But for Emily and Steven, this will be interesting and different, I hope. So you know what? We'll start with Keith so that the other 2 have time to think of an answer. Keith, often I find comic book creators are also comic book readers, which
Mm.
often means that they're probably nerds and collectors, and they have things that they love and collect. Keith, for you, what is the thing in your collection that brings you the most joy? Isn't maybe the most valuable, not maybe the most rare, but the thing that actually makes you the most happy?
Of all my comic books,
Of
That's
all
like,
of whatever, like if it's if you have a collection of pens that you really like and you have a particular pen that's just your favorite, if it's a book, it's a book, whatever. What brings you joy?
I mean, I guess this is going to be a little bit egotistical, but the comic kids books that I've done with my mom, right? Let's see if yeah, here we go. I've got one of our books right here that we've done together, and this was a great. I mean, we're still working together, so we've enjoyed the experience of getting to know each other as creators, and I think that it's a very rare opportunity to be able to work along with a family member and keep on working with them. So that for me has been a very special memory and situation I've been in. And in just generally, the comics I've created or been part of with the comic book community, people I've worked with. And I think Stephen said it earlier about creating something greater than yourself, creating something that you couldn't have imagined by yourself. And now you have it in your hand and you can pass it on to somebody and they can take it and imagine their own story. I think you've even said it before when we were doing the saltwater interview, and you were telling me things about the story that I didn't even know about, the story that I thought was amazing. Like so people are taking these stories we've created and filling in their own parts of the story with it. And that to me is always very special, because that's really what this is about, is passing on a story that you want to tell to somebody else so that they can, tell it to themselves and entertain themselves and maybe become a comic book creator themselves.
I love it. That's a fantastic answer. Thank you, Keith.
Yeah.
Stephen, I feel like you had some prep time. As soon as I mentioned the question, you started moving. Show me the thing that makes you happy.
Well, I collect hippos.
Oh.
I'm not sure if you can see it there too.
Oh,
yeah.
Hippo.
But yeah, no, I'm South African. My heritage is important, even it's a very complicated heritage, because, good Lord, South Africa it's a place. I feel a great kinship with the humble hippo. I've got whenever I'm traveling, I collect them. I've got like a 45-pound stinkwood hippo downstairs, which is just like enormous. I got it, and like my luggage was just immediately full. I had to buy another luggage to bring it home from South Africa. But I love, I don't know. There's like an energy to a hippo. They like float below the water. You can't see the bulk of them. They can move incredibly fast when they need to. They're so mean. My God, they're mean-spirited animals.
Oh, are they?
I feel a great kinship with them.
Fascinating. That's so cool. Thank you for sharing that. And Emily, I did see you jumped up rather briefly, grabbed something off your shelf there.
Yeah. Well, this is my shelf in my office, and it's kind of a good like encapsulation of a lot of the things that bring me joy and stuff. Because I've got like shelves of editing reference books,
Oh,
like
okay.
Chicago Manual of Style, like top notch, and stuff like that. But I got different artwork up there. But the one that I got up to grab was this print from Lucy Bellwood's Demon Dialogues. When she kickstarted that, she had these numbered prints. So I have number 75 of 200. But like Demon Dialogues was her 100-day project about like dealing with the like inner critic, inner voice.
Yeah.
And actually over the course of the pandemic, I had the opportunity to the Alaska Comics folks did their retreat thing. They did it online, and I had the chance to just like pop on and Lucy Bellwood did a session that was kind of just like a bunch of people. I don't remember what the topic was, but we kind of were all just talking about it and talking about like dealing with the pandemic and like big feelings and stuff. And it was kind of just like a moment of being like, oh, the comics people, they're the good people. Like they're the people that I want to be around. So that one kind of just reminds me, and it's got the you can, you can't side. So like, on days when it's just like not happening, like it's okay.
I like it. That is so cool.
But I also have like, I got my Lego bookshop up there. I've got a whole pile of notebooks. I think I have 2 notebooks dedicated just to this project at this point.
Awesome. Well,
and they all just get shelved away after projects are done.
Well, you know what? One day you will be able to go back and look through all of them, and be amazed at how far you've come. But also you'll have like a written history of what you've done, which will be mind-blowing the more that you do it. So I hope one day, years from now, when you're a top pristine editor in the world of whatever it is you want, that you get to go look back and be like, oh my God, look at all the stuff I've done.
I mean, old notebooks, man, they're so fun to look through. Like I just moved like at the beginning of the year, end of last year, and I was going through these old notebooks from before I started editing, freelance editing. I was in a job that I was desperately unhappy in, and there's all these like margin notes where I'm like, everything sucks. What's the point?
Oh no.
And there's just like me being like a really dramatic, unhappy worker. But I'm just like looking at them now. It's just like, that was then, and now I get to do this, and people trust me to work on their books, on their stories. They trust me with their words and with their art. And like, that is such an incredible like privilege. So that really brings me joy. And I have a little section on my shelf here of books that I've gotten to work on too. So.
Oh, that's cool. Well,
yeah.
That is a fantastic share in the spirit of the anthology and the fight against isolation. I think that's a fantastic thing to bring joy to you.
I just want to so I'm watching Instagram. Fel just said, Steve, do you know about the house hippos?
I do. The house hippos are amazing. That's a perfect little, like, I love that. Oh my God, I could talk about it for a while. Like the little peanut butter crumbs that it walks in, the early CG, that was pre-CG, that little commercial. That was all, I believe, rotoscoped.
I think so. Beautiful. Yeah. Oh, thank you for that, Keith. And Fel, thank you for sharing that. I love that little, I don't know, Canada Heritage moment, whatever it was.
Yeah, it was.
That phenomenon
it's
of
a Canadian deep cut for sure.
Oh yeah.
Concerned children's advertisers. That's who it was.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh yeah. Fel just popped a message. Yes, I thought it was real for the longest time. And by the wayside. Really? Yeah.
I know that Toronto has a pair of pygmy hippos. If you get a chance to see them, you should definitely go check them out. Pygmy hippos are like they're like the size of a Labrador. So they're not like as dangerous as actual hippos, and they're so cute. They're like these little like tubby, chubby chonkers. They just spin in the water very lazily. They're fantastic. I love them.
I love it. Then that brings me to sort of my last question. And I think what I'll ask for tonight is, because I'm going to get a very different answer from all of you. Currently, what is it that you're all reading for enjoyment? Or rather, what's the last thing that you read for enjoyment? I appreciate you all might be extremely busy.
I just finished Michelle Obama's autobiography.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, that was it. It was she's very uplifting in regards to just hope and talking about what the potential within all of us, right? And I'd wanted to read her book for a while, so I just happened to have the time to do it. So, yeah.
Love it. Very cool. And Emily, what have you read? I mean, other than like 1,000 comics.
What am I reading? I just started Catherine Layton's new book called Mother Like. It came out last Tuesday. It is a memoir about motherhood and stuff like that. Not very far in yet, but I'm really looking forward to it. I always have multiple books on the go, partially because I'm like reading for work and making sure I'm up with the market and all that stuff. But like, you know, different reading levels for different like moods. And I like to have an audiobook for going on walks and stuff.
Nice.
So I've been re-listening to The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It's like my comfort series. So I just finished So Long and Thanks for All the Fish this morning.
Love it. Awesome.
Yeah. And every time I listen to it, I like there's new things that are comforting and hilarious. And it's just a good time.
That's
Adam's
awesome.
such a great command of voice. Like his books have a very specific tone to them that no one else can quite match.
Yeah. It's like deeply cynical at times, but also still uplifting. And you're like, how are you striking that balance?
It's like a cynical whimsy. There's like a silliness to it, but like you just got to like smile and nod.
Yeah.
I love it. And last but not least, Steven, what have you been reading?
I've been reading a lot of forgive me. It's a manga series called Frieren Beyond Journey's End. It's just an anime that just wrapped up. It's just beautifully animated. Just the premise is that it's your standard hero's tale of like, oh, there's a bunch of ragtag heroes who get together to fight the Dark Lord, etc. Only they beat the Dark Lord 80 years ago, and now the immortal elf has to come to terms with the fact that all of her party members, all of her team, they've died, they've passed. She alone remembers them. She's like walking this place where like a land where like the statues of her friends no longer resemble them because they're second generations of sculptures.
Well, that's wow. Okay. I mean, I'm in. That actually sounds fascinating, but like,
so it's a very like it's got a wistful book, but it's also quite funny. It's a story of this immortal elf taking her first human apprentice and like forcing herself to try to reconnect with human society. And something like coming out of the pandemic, to me, there's something relatable to that. It's this character who has lived in total isolation, done a great thing, and even that great thing is now fading out of memory.
fascinating. All right, I've got to go check that out.
It's great.
Thank you.
Yeah, sounds great.
But that does bring us to the end of our interview. Once again, I will proudly and happily say thank you all for letting me be a part of promoting TO Comix. And of course, the new book will be coming out, or going on, I should say, live on Kickstarter, April 17th. I will have links in the doobly-doo as soon as I can. So if you're watching live now, go follow TO Comix all over social media so that you see the post. If not, follow me so that you will see the post. And keep an eye out. And with that, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think down below of the anthology series, what these fine people do, and we will see you next time.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Golden age to present, digest to oversize. Never miss new comic day. Yeah, no surprise. So where's my no prize? Check the letter columns. Can't find issue 2.